Good morning. Another aspect of your project that you're going to need to be working on is the costume and makeup design for your character specifically. Let's get started.
One of the first things you want to do when you're working with costume and makeup is start thinking about and considering your character and answering a few simple questions about that character before you start imagining and playing with what that costume is going to look like. So the first thing you want to consider is, what can I learn from, well, honestly, the very, very first thing you would probably do is meet with your director and talk with them about their vision. But since you are director and actor this time, you just get to ask yourself these questions. What can I learn from the time period or social customs? If your piece is set in a modern time period, this might simply be a matter of considering the specific region. Is it US? Is it Europe? Is it whatever, right? To get a feel for costuming. And you might already have some great ideas for that. But if your time period, like mine, is an older time period, it is very specific, but they did have a certain style of dress, at that time that is different than what I'm used to, then my first best friend is going to be research online. And my play, Romeo and Juliet, is set during the Renaissance. So I'm going to research Renaissance, and I do happen to know already because of time spent researching this play or reading about this play in other contexts, that most of the costuming back then was just regular everyday dress. They didn't actually come up with like costumes specifically for Juliet. Juliet would just wear a dress that was typical for the time period. All right, so Renaissance dresses, I guess is what oops, that's not how you spell dress, is how I'm gonna start for now. And honestly with this, I don't even know if I want a whole bunch of, oh look, I am on all, but I'm already getting a lot of images, which is not surprising. I was gonna say, I don't know that I want a whole lot of web results necessarily or want to read things. I think I'm better off for this particular type of research just looking at images, because that's gonna show me what it is I want to know. So I can get a feel here for, now some of this stuff that is like shopping style, that is modeled after Renaissance, but that's not going to be real Renaissance most of the time, okay? Because their clothing was uncomfortable. These are made to be comfortable and modern. But some of this stuff down here might be a little bit more realistic, a little bit more on point. This looks it looks pretty good. These look pretty good. A lot of stuff that comes, becomes interesting because in this context for costume and stuff, you can often actually use films that are supposed to be realistic to that time period as a great resource, because if they are making a film that is realistic to the time period, someone has taken the time to be dramaturge already. They have already taken time researching and learning and doing a lot of that work, and so their work should be pretty accurate and you can probably rely on it. All right, so this gives me an idea. And what I might do here is just kind of go through and think about the other aspects of my character, like finish my analysis of the character, and then come back to these and look for something as kind of a model that I think is about as close as I can find to what I think Juliet would probably wear. I know that she is wealthy, so I'm probably looking more at some of these more elaborate designs. Things like this, but then also she does not strike me as like a super frivolous or like crazy over the top fashion style person. That's just not her personality. So I'm gonna look for something that, like, this is really striking me heavily, maybe a little bit more reserved. All right, it's not too flashy, it's not too crazy, but it does have some nice embellishment, which speaks to the depth of her character. And it's red, and for whatever reason I'm very drawn to red right now for her. And it's clearly a wealthier style dress. It's not the peasant look that some of these things, like this type of thing, has more of a peasant look to it. Okay? So as I ask myself these questions and start conducting my research, I'm going to be jotting down notes for myself about these things. So for time period, I might make some notes about what I saw for those dresses, right? Dresses. For women, it was always dresses, right? We didn't get to wear pants at that time. Like large, long skirts, tight bodices, whatever else, lots of embellishments. all the ribbons and all that. Oh my God, can I spell this early? Embellishments. Yes, I can. Hooray, I can spell. Okay, all right. And I'd probably get a little bit more detailed with the notes, but again, I'm kind of trying to be conscientious of time for you as well. So, so I'd write some notes about what I find for the time period, social customs, etc. All right. Next thing that I'm looking at, does the time or place of the scene or scenes before and after prescribe anything? So my scene, that I go back to my text, right? My scene happens to fall immediately after a big masquerade party that's happened at her house. So is it likely that she still has on her costume? Quite possibly. All right, so time and place. I'm gonna make some notes for myself about costume question mark. Oh, from party, I should specify, right? Because I am making a costume design. From party question mark. Maybe a mask. But maybe she's holding the mask now. That might be fun to really design, right? Let's see, the other thing about the time and place of where this happens is this is happening out on her balcony, presumably by her bedroom. So she's gone up like to go to bed, but then she comes out on this balcony and she's talking to herself and thinking about Romeo and blah, 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 blah. So maybe she's in her costume. Maybe she's already in her pajamas, which didn't look like pajamas back then. They looked like another darn dress, but you know. Pajamas question mark. I still also really like the idea of designing a mask, so I'm probably going to incorporate that. All right, so that gives me an idea of the scene. And again, I don't want to just look at, I definitely want to look at the scene that I'm designing for, but I want to think also about the scene immediately before and the scene immediately after this one, all right? Because that's going to help me make decisions about what's most important and what I want to include. Mood of the scene. Can I use the costume to symbolize anything? Woohoo, this is going to be fun. All right, so the mood of my scene, she's talking about love. In my scene, she's talking to Romeo about being embarrassed about him overhearing all this stuff about how she loves him. So I would say that there's like a very heavy romantic overture in my scene. Mood, there's a lot of romance. That's really the predominant mood. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna leave that there. Can I use the costume to symbolize anything? Well, there is, and this is always what I jump to, so I'm not gonna show you right now. Well, maybe I will show you in just a second, but yeah, I'll show you. What this is in 2000 and, oh no, it wasn't. It was 1999, a guy named Baz Luhrmann, who's a film director, created a film adaptation of Romeo and Juliet that modernized pretty much everything except the language. And in his film adaptation, Juliet's costume for the party was an angel costume, and Romeo was dressed as a knight, which is very symbolic, right? Because of their whole conversation, that little dialogue when they first meet about saints and pilgrims and lips and hands touching and all that mess. So I really loved that choice when he did that, and that's definitely something that I think I might be inspired by as far as what Juliet symbolizes.
Let's talk about some of the other things she symbolizes, things like purity, hope, joy, love, all that is good and right in the world, right? Like Romeo is coming from this place of fighting and difficulty with the Montagues and Capulets, and he sees Juliet, and she is the breath of fresh air, you know? And the same for her. He is her breath of fresh air in the midst of all of this chaos, and hey, can you marry this dude that you haven't met, and blah, 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 right? So mood, romance, symbols, right? We've got angels, saints, pilgrims. We've got light and dark, because there's a lot of, in this particular scene, there's a lot of light and dark images. He compares Juliet to the sun. And anytime you did that in Renaissance time period, it was like straight up trying to have them represent purity and like all that is good in the world, right? The sun was still, and there's this rebirth of Greek thought, right? And the sun for the Greeks was like the end all be all, right? So light, dark, so yeah, so that's some of the symbolism and stuff that's going on here that I could definitely tap into and use for my costume. Maybe Juliet has like a little sun symbol that she wears around her neck, or maybe she has sun symbols that are weaved into the fabric of her costume. I don't know, but we'll play with it. But that's something, you know, to think about and to come up with some ideas for, because it'll help you. All right. Any inspirations from previous artists? Well, we already looked at the angel costume that Baz Luhrmann created, or that Baz Luhrmann's costume designer created, I guess, right? So that's one thing, but you could, again, conduct a little bit more research on your own and see if there's, especially if your play is rather famous, something that's been performed a few times, you can probably find a few other people's ideas about what that character looks like and their costume, and draw some inspiration from that. I'm not suggesting that you copy somebody else's costume idea. That is not okay, all right? But taking the time to look at what other people have done and then setting that to the side and thinking on your own to come up with your own ideas can be very helpful, especially if you feel really stuck or like costume design is not really your thing, like it's not really mine, okay? And then finally, what is my character's personality? Okay, so that is one of those things that is super helpful. So if we're looking at Juliet, oh my god, I really cannot spell first thing in the morning. Personality, she is to some extent shy. I think a lot of the representations and a lot of like her early lines in the play suggest that she might have a shyness to her. She is often portrayed as a little bit childish in the beginning of the play, and childish is not the word, I'm sorry, it's more like childlike. She's got a child's heart in the sense that she is trusting, she is faithful, she is loyal. Okay, well, you can't read my handwriting because it's terrible, but whatever. She, you know, when this whole thing about Tybalt and Romeo comes up and she finds out that Romeo has killed Tybalt, she's got a huge decision to make. And she makes the choice because Romeo has been for her everything that, even though they've only known each other for a couple hot seconds, she makes the choice to be loyal to him, you know, instead of her family who she's known all this time. So I think that suggests a lot about her relationship with her family and about the difficulties that she's faced in dealing with them, that, you know, she's willing to set all of that aside along with any wealth or comfort that she could experience in life to be with this guy that she just met. So there must be something incredibly captivating about his heart that she has attached herself to be able to make that kind of a choice. So I also think that she has a high level of wisdom. I think some people would argue the exact opposite, that she's crazy foolish, but that's okay. I think that she is intuitive, highly intuitive, which means like she can kind of read into things and understand people and understand their motives and stuff without necessarily being told or without them specifically revealing themselves. Like she just gets that stuff without them telling her. All right, so once I've taken some time to study my scene and think about the character and think about the costume, then I can start actually designing what it is I want that
Once I've spent time brainstorming the costume and researching and thinking about the costume, now I'm ready to actually draw it on a template, okay? All right, so this is like the front of the costume, and then this would represent the back of the costume. And I'm starting by lining everything out or creating like the basic shape of the costume with just a normal pencil, a normal gray pencil where I can erase when I make mistakes, and I can go back and fix it, and then I'll add color and stuff later. But that's the first thing that I'm doing. So the first thing I'm doing, again, I am lining out the costume. I know that this top piece of her costume is going to be very loose fitting, except for the wrists, which are cinched, right? I know that it is going to have a low neckline and tie up some at the, and it's a scoop neckline for sure. That scoop doesn't look good, so see, already I'm making a mistake in fixing it. Yay! And that's why pencils are so wonderful, because they allow you to do that. Okay, so as you can see, I now have the entire costume outline on the body, this design template, and I have found myself some colors. I am using crayons to color in my design because there's a lot of versatility, a lot of variety of colors. All right, so I know that this underneath portion, this dress that she's wearing under the skirt, is going to be white in color. That's going to be really fun to try to portray on white paper, but here we go. I'm going to use my white crayon anyway. And I'm gonna just color in this entire thing white, and of course you can't see anything happening because it's a white crayon on white paper. So I might, just make that note off to the side when I'm making my notes later to say, okay, the top part of the bodice is white. You can't see it because I colored it with a white crayon, and that's just how life is. It's okay. I would also make a note carefully about this fact that this down here, this bottom part of the sleeve is lace. So this is like I would also make notes about what style of fabric. So this is a light cotton underdress or slip. That's the word I was looking for. It's not a muumuu, it's a slip. Ha 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 ha, success. Okay, light cotton underdress or a slip. The sleeve is going to be lace. After the elastic. I don't know how else to describe that. So lace beyond wrist. All right, so the idea there is that I'm going to color everything in, and then I'm going to make notes about the materials and about any embellishments or details that I've got, right? So I might make a note about this, the fact that there's a lace up front. Lace up front. It goes like, I don't know, halfway down the shirt, or maybe 6 inches down the shirt. 6 inches down shirt. Okay. And then I would do the same with the skirt. I'm going to color it in. Okay, so now the bodice of the costume and the skirt of the costume are colored. I have discovered, well, I kind of knew this, I guess, but crayons are not great for detail at all. So I have found myself needing to write some pretty copious notes about what's going on here and what's happening. For example, this pink-ish or raspberry colored highlights along the skirt are actually, the first thought was that they were fringy, or that they could be fringy, but fringe is very like 1920s, and I am not necessarily going for a 1920s look. If we do them in lace, however, that is a material that was popular during the Renaissance, and so these little raspberry overlays would be in lace. And they'd happen, periodically throughout the costume. This background color I actually don't like very much. I really would have liked to go for a more like dark burgundy color. Couldn't find it in the crayons that I have, so I made a note about that, right? Darker red, almost burgundy color for the skirt. I highly recommend that you test your colors on a separate piece of paper before you use them and make sure you have what you want. Learned that. I made a note about the fact that this is a ribbon sash closure at the waist. It's going to tie in front because that makes the most sense. I thought about trying to do it one way or the other, and I was like, you know what? If this were just like you just make a little hole basically there in the top in the hemline, and then be able to feed a ribbon through it, and then you can tie it in the front. It's no big deal. That works probably best. So there you go, a drawn costume with notes about embellishments and stuff. And I would probably play with this some more and come up with a few more ideas and like specificities and do them. The other thing that I would be doing, that you'll be doing, that I'm not going to have in this video, is creating the back of the costume. You will need to draw the back as well and have both of those visible with notes to talk about how they are. So that's your costume design. When I'm considering makeup, I'm basically going to think about all the same things as far as the character is concerned that I did for costume. So all of these notes that I took when I was thinking about costumes still apply for makeup. What I might do is just go back through and rethink about all those things that I thought about and use that to kind of gear my thought and my planning for the makeup, all right? So for time period, I was thinking dresses. Time period as far as makeup is concerned, they did not wear a whole ton of makeup during the Renaissance, right? And it was made out of more natural substances and everything. And with Juliet being as young as she was, she wouldn't have really felt the need for much makeup, and she probably didn't need much makeup. So I guess what the time period would tell me about makeup is that it would be more of a natural look. All right, so I want to keep her look natural, light, fresh-faced, right? She needs to look young and vibrant and bright. Fresh-faced, young, vibrant, and bright. And that really kind of covers almost everything, I think, but we'll double-check our thinking all the way through. So time and place, again, we're talking about it's nighttime. It's on her balcony. and she is on her way to get ready for bed. So again, for makeup, that would suggest that, you know, if she's getting ready for bed, if she even had any makeup on, it's probably off now. So again, we want whatever makeup we do to appear very natural. We don't want it to be super overpowering or anything. Personality, again, she's young. That goes back to that fresh-faced, vibrant, and bright bit, right? So I'm just going to draw an arrow to that. This is my planning, my brainstorming. I wouldn't even necessarily turn this part in. This is just for me to think through it and prepare myself. And then finally, mood, romance symbols. So I think when we're dealing with mood and we've got a romantic focus for the mood, I think then there has to be kind of a major focus, or if we're going to think about where we want to draw the eye for a makeup design, where we want, what we want them to notice about the makeup design, I think lips, right? For romance, that's kind of where I feel like focus ought to be. And so I'm going to try to emphasize the lips in my makeup design because I think that's going to be important. For the makeup design, I again have a face template. I printed this one off of online. I don't know, I found it somewhere and printed it. So what I've done before I started this video is I have taken some time to go through the crayon box because again, I am missing the colored pencils. They were stolen by a child. And I have tested some colors and picked out, not all of these are colors that I'm using, but I picked out some ones that I think will work well. About halfway through my color picking, I realized that I'm supposed to be doing this makeup design based on my own face because I am the one performing. So the skin color is probably not quite right because I had this like idea of Juliet in mind. But then I remembered that, you know, I consider myself Latina anyway, so it kind of works. All right. So as I'm going through and when I'm doing the makeup design, the first thing that I'm going to do for my makeup design is color the whole face, whatever the skin color is. And again, this works best with colored pencils. Crayons can work as well. That's what I'm going to be using. Just the colors don't blend quite as well. So, you know, it is what it is. And none of it, of course, blends like actual makeup does, but that's okay. We're just doing the best we can. So I'm going to start out and I'm just going to color all over the face and get a nice gentle background shade, not too thick, but just a real quick gentle background shade of whatever my skin tone color is. And again, you can invent it for whatever skin tone color you want, but if you are the one performing, then you probably ought to base the skin tone on your own skin tone, unlike me. Another thing you might want to pay attention to as you're doing it is the direction of your strokes. Like notice on the nose, I'm kind of going vertically because the nose kind of lends itself more to a vertical direction or grain of coloration. And then as I go across the different areas of the face, I will probably change that direction some, like the eyes. It makes sense to kind of come out this way. But where those general lines and creases in the face happen naturally, that's where I would change my direction of direction of actual stroke when coloring. And I think that will help just make the face seem a little bit more realistic, even though we're using crayons, so obviously it's not really realistic. Okay, so I have finished coloring the whole face with that general skin color, and I've even added my eye color. I think I did pretty good on the eye color, actually. I'm very proud of myself right now. All right, so from there, I'm gonna start thinking about the actual makeup application and what that's gonna look like on this face, right? So I'm gonna start with eyebrows, just because I am not a makeup person, and that makes sense to me for where to start. If I add any, I'd probably go right around this outside edge here to try to bring emphasis and open that eye up, and then come in just a little bit under the eye. Again, we want to open it up, so if you go real heavy with the eyeliner over the whole eyelid or all around the whole eyelid, it actually closes the eye down and makes it look less open. But if you have a little bit of dark over here in this corner, it helps open it up. I'm also going to add just a hint of like lavender up here. And this is just based on personal experience. Sorry guys, I know that you won't have any kind of natural experience necessarily with makeup unless you are a guy who has been doing makeup for a minute. But this lavender really, I've noticed, kind of makes, with my eye color, makes my face kind of come to life. For her cheeks, I am going to add a little bit of blush because, again, I'm going for that fresh-faced, young, youthful look. When adding blush, you want to stay along the cheekbone because that is the part of the cheek that is most prominent. Places that get the most light are going to get lighter colors. Places when you're doing contouring, you can learn about this, and we have contouring videos, and we did makeup as an exercise. You learned a bit about contouring, right? Places that are usually in shadow, like the hollow of the cheek, would need to be made darker, and that's how you emphasize that face, and so the facial expressions are more readable from a distance. All right, so last thing is I had talked about I want to really emphasize her lips because this scene is about romance, right? And it's got a romantic mood. So in order to do that, I'm going to line them with this kind of purpley pink color. So we're gonna line the lip with a purpley pink color to really bring emphasis to it and make sure that it stands out and that it's very clear. And then I'm gonna come through again with a much brighter color than I would probably typically use to go for a natural look. That line doesn't look right. Sorry, hold on. And I have no idea because this crayon has completely lost its wrapper, so I have no idea what the name for this particular color is, but it is what it is, right? Again, I'm going to try to go with the natural lines that occur in the lips and the way they crease. So I'm going to actually go vertically when I am drawing in the color here because our natural lip lines tend to go kind of vertical. They do a little bit, there's like a center spot here usually on most people, right? And then they do a little bit of kind of leaning out to the side. So I'm gonna make them slightly leaned out to the side and maybe a little bit curved because there does tend to be a bit of a curve there. We'll see if this actually turns out the way I'm hoping it will. All right, so there's the finished product on the lips. It is definitely a little more Barbie peak in the center than I was going for, and then that raspberry kind of contrasts with it a bit. So if I had this to do over, I'd probably wipe it off at this point and try again, but it's crayon, so that's not happening. So the last step then is gonna be to draw notes about each aspect of this makeup. Why will the pen not draw across crayon? Okay, whatever. Draw notes about each aspect of the makeup design itself. So I'd start with maybe lips, and I'd talk about lips, use a dark pink / purple liner to emphasize the lips as a focal point. Focal point because this is a romantic scene. And then use a light pink lipstick because she's young. Boom. So there are all my notes. We've already seen the one for the lips. And then here's one for the blush. I talk a little bit about where it goes, what color it is, how it should be on there. Basically, the notes here are to show what I was trying to accomplish and also to explain what I did to try to accomplish that. And then also to explain what the makeup actually is. So if someone were trying to apply this, they would be able to actually apply it and like do a copy of what I've got. If we were doing a for real makeup design, you would absolutely need to give like specific directions. Do this first, do this second, do this third, right? For our purposes, really, I am more interested in your thought work and the intent behind what you're doing. So that's what your notes want to focus on, right? Notice here, light lavender eyeshadow just in the crease, the outer edge, and a little on the upper lid. That's actually just about the thing. Light pink blush to demonstrate youthfulness and excitement and emotion, right? So those are things I want to see your thoughts. That's what I'm looking for in your notes. And I think that just about does it for makeup and costume.